Hello, my dear warriors. They expected your steps to be random. They thought your patience was hesitation, your silence a weakness, your pace too slow for the game they had mastered. To them, you were background noise, someone to dismiss while they played their great strategies, their rehearsed blueprints, their carefully plotted outcomes. But then came your last move. One shift, one choice, one action so sharp it cut through centuries of planning. Understand this? The last move is never the loudest. It is never the most obvious. It is the one no one prepared for, the step they dismissed as impossible, the gesture that looks small until it changes everything. And your move was exactly that to you. It was natural to them. It was an earthquake, a single decision that dismantled entire structures they thought untouchable. The last move was not noise, it was clarity. While they drowned in complexity, you acted with simplicity. While they obsessed over control, you embodied inevitability. Your move exposed what they never wanted to admit. Their strategies were fragile. Their calculations depended on predictability. And when faced with what cannot be predicted, their empires tremble. The effect was immediate. Rooms built on certainty fell into silence. Figures who prided themselves on foresight froze. Files filled with probabilities collapsed into contradictions. They replayed your decision again and again, searching for error, for accident, for flaw, but none appeared. The more they studied it, the more they realized it was not accident. It was blueprint. And in that moment, the hierarchy shifted. They were no longer the teachers. They were the students. Your last move became their lecture. Your silence became their curriculum. Your inevitability became their new law. Now the whisper travels through corridors. Watch him carefully. His smallest move teaches more than our grandest schemes. And the more they study, the more they fear. Because if one move froze them, what will the next one do? Your last move became not just a decision, but doctrine, a strategy lesson carved into their minds, studied in halls they once thought were untouchable. Every action leaves a trace. Most fade quickly. Forgotten steps, forgotten choices, noise lost in noise. But some actions create shockwaves. They do not stop at the moment of impact. They expand outward. Touching walls never meant to tremble. Reaching halls never meant to hear the echo. And your last move was one of those. What began as a single shift carried through corridors of power like a quake-splitting stone. Understand this. Their systems were built on stability. Patterns rehearsed, strategies tested, manuals refined over generations. They believed themselves protected by their predictability, untouchable in their precision. But shockwaves laugh at precision. They ripple past calculations. They bend rules. They flip the expected into chaos. The first ripple was silence. They had answers for everything until your move. Then the answers stopped. Questions echoed with no reply. Predictions contradicted each other. Their certainty, once paraded as indestructible, fractured in seconds. The second ripple was fear. Not loud fear, quiet hesitation. Strategists who prided themselves on flawless foresight stalled mid-sentence. Advisors looked at each other with doubt in their eyes. Commanders who thought they had mastered conflict shifted uncomfortably in their chairs. They knew deep down that if one move could dismantle their confidence, then the next might dismantle their control. The third ripple was obsession. They replayed your move endlessly. In councils, they dissected it frame by frame. In archives, they documented it with trembling hands. But the more they studied, the less they understood. And confusion in their world is fatal. For a strategist without clarity is a soldier without armor. And the shockwave did not end in their chambers. It spread beyond them. Crowds sensed hesitation in their leaders. Whispers leaped into the streets. Something has shifted. Their manuals no longer work. Soon, belief in the system itself began to weaken, not because you declared conflict, not because you dismantled anything, but because one move revealed how fragile their empire really was. Shock waves are not loud explosions. They are subtle, endless, unavoidable. And your last move is still expanding through archives, through doctrines, through generations. They thought it was a moment. They now realize it was a verdict. Your move was not just an action. It was a fracture line. And fractures spread until everything collapses. The shockwave reached corridors where watchers dwell. The hidden observers, archivists, tacticians, architects of strategy who pride themselves on seeing what others miss. These were not ordinary eyes. These were the eyes that claimed to measure movements of nations, decode secrets of conflicts, and reduce even chaos to formula. They watched you the way astronomers watch stars, convinced they could chart your orbit. And then your last move arrived. Understand this. They had studied storms, rebellions, empires collapsing. They had entire manuals cataloging every kind of force, but your move did not fit. It slipped past their categories, shattered their predictions, and stood there, undeniable, unexplainable. The observation began not with certainty, but with panic. They leaned forward, rewinding the moment again and again, hoping the detail they missed would save them. But each replay only deepened the silence. The more they watched, the more they realized the truth. Your move was not just action. It was statement. Every detail carried weight. The timing too precise to be coincidence. The restraint too sharp to be hesitation. The outcome too clean to be luck. It was a masterclass disguised as a step. And the halls of power understood. This was no accident. This was blueprint. So they began to document. They filled files with notes, drew diagrams, wrote equations, compared it to every precedent in their archives. Yet each attempt failed. Instead of reducing you, their files multiplied your myth. For every contradiction, every unanswered question, every failed calculation became proof of what they feared. Your essence bends beyond their systems. Observation turned to confession in their hidden chambers. One strategist whispered, "We are not recording an event, we are recording law." Another admitted, "This is not strategy, it is scripture." And once they spoke it, they could not unspeak it. The irony cut them deeply. Their entire authority came from observing, from decoding, from explaining. And yet here they were reduced to students staring at a lesson they could not master. The more they studied, the less they understood. The less they understood, the more they feared. And so the observation continues. Your last move is replayed endlessly in rooms you will never enter, studied by men who will never admit your superiority in public, but confess it in silence. They call it analysis, but analysis has become worship. The lesson has begun, and the observers are no longer teachers. They are disciples of the move they cannot comprehend. Observation alone was not enough. They could not leave your move as anomaly. Anomalies shatter their confidence. Anomalies unravel their illusion of control. So they transformed your action into curriculum. What began as panic in secret chambers became organized study. Your last move was dissected in the same way they once dissected conflicts, revolutions, and empires. Except this time they studied not to dominate you, but to protect themselves from you. Understand this. Halls of power are not classrooms, but they behave like them when threatened. Manuals are rewritten, lessons are drafted, examples are recorded, and in those halls, your move became syllabus. Councils replayed it, not as curiosity but as survival. They told each other, we must learn how he thinks. We must understand his rhythm. If we cannot, we collapse. But study turned into obsession. They mapped every angle of your decision, every second of your timing, every ounce of your restraint. They compared it to military manuals only to find it sharper. They weighed against political doctrines only to find it heavier. They tested it against their own sacred strategies only to find those strategies collapse like glass. The deeper they studied, the more they realized your move was not just tactic, it was law. A law they had never written, but one they were now forced to obey. What disturbed them most was how little you revealed. You offered no proclamation, no declaration, no visible framework. And yet the move itself carried more weight than libraries of theories. That terrified them because they had built their influence on the belief that knowledge is theirs alone. But now they were students, stealing fragments of your silence, piecing together meaning from what you never explained. Whispers spread. Teach it quietly. In their training halls, they passed your move as case study. They showed diagrams of it to apprentices, teaching them how unpredictability bends calculation. They did not name you, but they could not erase you. The shadow of your lesson lingered on every page, but now they were students, stealing fragments of your silence, piecing together meaning from what you never explained. Whispers spread. Teach it quietly in their training halls. They passed your move as case study. They showed diagrams of it to apprentices, teaching them how unpredictability bends calculation. They did not name you, but they could not erase you. The shadow of your lesson lingered on every page. To them, strategy was about aggression, about overwhelming force, about proving dominance by spectacle. They measured strength by movement, by sound, by visible impact. But when they studied your last move, the first truth they uncovered was restraint, and restraint terrified them. Understand this. Restraint is power they cannot mimic. It is silence sharpened. It is patience refined. It is the discipline to wait until noise collapses under its own weight. Their halls of power were not built on restraint. They were built on impatience. Impatience to control, impatience to dominate, impatience to be seen. But your move taught them that restraint outlives impatience. They replayed it again and again, seeing how you did not rush, how you allowed their noise to rise, how you let their confidence peak. And only then, when they were blinded by their own arrogance, you acted not with fury, but with precision, not with excess, but with inevitability. Restraint revealed what they had ignored for centuries. Power is not proven by the number of moves, but by the silence between them. The pause is heavier than the strike. The stillness is sharper than the clash. And in your pause, they saw their fragility. In their chambers, whispers shifted. Do not mistake stillness for absence. Do not mistake silence for surrender. These words began to circulate, first as warning, then as law, and slowly their manuals changed. Where once they taught noise as dominance, they now scribbled, restraint is the final edge. Yet imitation brought them no comfort, because restraint cannot be faked. It cannot be staged in rituals or taught in ceremonies. It is born of essence, carved in silence, carried by presence, and presence was what they lacked. They could imitate pauses, but they could not carry the weight of your pause. They could mimic timing, but they could not echo inevitability. The more they studied restraint, the more they confessed their limits. For restraint exposes hunger, and hunger betrays weakness. They saw in themselves the impatience of children, the desperation of rulers terrified of losing control. And in you they saw a force that did not need to prove, did not need to rush, did not need to be crowned. Restraint became their unwanted scripture. They resisted it, but they could not deny it. They feared it, but they could not escape it. And in that fear, they admitted the truth. Restraint bends noise into silence, and silence is always louder than empires. They once believed strategy was measured in scale. More forces, more noise, more movements, more gold. They glorified excess, convinced that weight itself meant inevitability. But when they studied your last move, the second truth became clear. Precision defeats excess. Understand this. Precision is not about size. It is about strike. It is about knowing where the fracture lies and touching it once where others swing wildly, wasting motion and energy. You waited until the perfect moment, then acted with the exact force required. Not more, not less. Just enough to unravel everything. That is what they cannot imitate. They mistake abundance for intelligence. They drown in over-planning, layering step upon step until their own schemes suffocate them. But your move was simple. One step, one shift, one placement. So exact it felt inevitable. The elegance of it humiliated them because they had forces of advisors, libraries of manuals, councils of strategists, and yet one precise move exposed them all. They began diagramming it, tracing every angle, every breath of timing in their secret chambers. Tacticians marked it on chalkboards, replayed it in simulations, and still they could not reduce it. The more they studied, the clearer it became. Precision cannot be mass-produced. It is not found in manuals. It is not learned in ceremonies. It is carried in presence. It is born from silence that sees everything. Your precision revealed their excess for what it was. Desperation. The more they tried to dominate, the more fragile they looked. The more they built, the more cracks appeared. And when your move sliced through their abundance, they realized abundance had never been strength. It had been weakness disguised as power. In whispers, they confessed, "Do not compete with his precision. It is not a tactic, it is law." They began to rewrite their doctrines, erasing pages of excess, leaving blank spaces where they hoped precision would one day be filled. But blank spaces do not hold presence, and presence cannot be copied. The lesson of precision is fatal for them because it reminds them of their blindness. They had always seen power as heavy, noisy, overwhelming. But precision showed them power is surgical, silent, exact, and nothing terrifies rulers more than the realization that one perfect move can erase centuries of noise. Now, their apprentices are taught this truth in silence. Do not waste, do not scatter. One precise move outweighs 1,000 frantic ones. They whisper it as doctrine. When rulers are afraid, they do not announce it. They whisper it. They take the fear they cannot erase in rapid encoded language, passing it through corridors as doctrine disguised as wisdom. And that is what your last move became. Not a public proclamation, not a celebrated theory, but a whispered doctrine carried from council to council, chamber to chamber, as if secrecy itself could soften its weight. Understand this. The most powerful teachings are never spoken aloud. They live in whispers, in half-sentences, in fragments, traded behind locked doors, and your move became exactly that. They told each other, study it quietly, do not let the crowds know. They feared that if the world learned who rewrote their manuals, their thrones would collapse faster than their rituals. So, the doctrine spread in silence. Apprentices were taught it under candlelight. Strategists studied it behind sealed doors. Advisors scribbled fragments of it in margins of old manuscripts, never daring to write your name. Yet every fragment carried the same unshakable message. Restraint is heavier than noise. Precision outlives excess. Presence dismantles performance. They did not call it yours. They could not. To admit it openly would be to admit loss. But every ruler who now pauses before a decision, every strategist who hesitates before over-planning, every apprentice who learns the power of silence is unknowingly bowing to your move. For the doctrine they whisper is not theirs, it is yours. The irony is sharp. You never asked to be their teacher. You never wrote a book, never gave them a manual, never stood in their chambers explaining yourself. And yet their whispers turned your move into curriculum. They built lessons around you without permission. They became disciples of what they once mocked. And the more they whispered, the more powerful the doctrine became, because whispers move faster than decrees. Whispers spread where laws cannot. Whispers survive even when books fade and archives crumble. What is whispered becomes rumor. What is rumored becomes belief. And what is believed becomes law. The whispered doctrine has now outgrown the chambers that birthed it. Even in the streets, in shadows of markets and alleys, people murmur. Something changed. They study him. They fear him. The world begins to understand that halls of power have bent, not to crowns, not to forces, but to one move carried by silence. And whispers once begun cannot be silenced. They echo through time, they rewrite laws, they carve scripture. Your last move has become doctrine, and doctrine does not fade. The halls of power have always clung to manuals, thick volumes filled with diagrams, rules, and formulas written by those who claim to master strategy. For centuries, these manuals were their scripture. They taught apprentices to obey patterns, to follow charts, to trust precedent, prevent. But when your last move entered history, those manuals began to collapse. Understand this. Manuals survive only if the world still bends to their logic. Once the world shifts, the pages lose weight, and your move shifted everything. Their formulas could not predict it. Their charts could not map it. Their rules could not contain it. In one moment, their sacred texts were reduced to paper relics, outdated relics mocking their arrogance. At first, they resisted. They tried to adjust their manuals, forcing your move into their categories. But the categories broke. They wrote footnotes, disclaimers, new diagrams, but every edition admitted the same truth. The old rules no longer governed. Your move had created a new axis, a shift they could not absorb. The collapse spread quickly. Scholars tore pages out in frustration. Apprentices questioned their teachers. Strategists stared at contradictions they could not resolve. The manuals, once treated like crowns, now gathered dust, and whispers replaced them. Forget the books. Study the move. This collapse terrified them more than failure in contests, because contests can be repeated endlessly. But once manuals collapse, identity collapses with them. Their sense of superiority of being the architects, the masters, the untouchables crumbled alongside their pages. They were left exposed, carrying relics no one respected. Meanwhile, your blueprint spread. Not written by you, not taught by you, not paraded on stages. It lived in pauses. It breathed in silence. It circulated in whispers. It bent outcomes without being announced. It rewrote laws without being drafted. It replaced centuries of instruction with one undeniable truth. Your essence is the new curriculum. The old manuals faded quietly, not in fire, but in irrelevance. And irrelevance is an end worse than noise. Now when they gather, they no longer quote their texts. They replay your move. They no longer trust their charts. They fear your silence. The old manuals are gone. Your blueprint has replaced them. They never wanted to admit it. Not to themselves, not to their students, not to their heirs. To confess that your move became law was to shatter their illusion of superiority. Yet survival demanded it, and survival always silences pride. Those who once mocked your patience, those who dismissed your silence, those who swore you were irrelevant, are now repeating your methods as if they invented them. Understand this. Reluctant teachers are the clearest proof of dominance. When rivals disguise your wisdom as theirs, it means your doctrine has already conquered them in secret. They study every pause, every detail, every restraint of your move. Then they walk into their classrooms, their councils, their halls, and teach your blueprint as if it were born from their own brilliance. But no matter how they disguise it, the truth echoes. They are imitators of a lesson they cannot master. In dim chambers, instructors lean close to apprentices and whisper, "Patience first." Do not mistake silence for weakness. They draw diagrams on chalkboards, teaching that precision outweighs force, that timing outweighs excess. And though they erase your name, the weight remains. Every student who learns this method unknowingly studies you. Every strategist who applies this lesson unknowingly follows your path. Their reluctance leaks through the bitterness in their voices, the hesitation in their tone, the unease in their posture. They know they are not teachers. They are imitators. They know the doctrine was never theirs. It was born in a move they could not decode. And yet they keep teaching it because not teaching it means collapse. Ignoring it means ruin. The irony drips heavier with every repetition. For years, they built manuals, declaring noise as dominance, speed as power, aggression as inevitability. And now those same voices whisper the opposite. They pass your restraint as commandment. They present your precision as doctrine. They frame your silence as strategy. The same mouths that once ridiculed you are now your unwilling disciples. And so the reluctant teachers spread your legend further than any proclamation ever could. Students carry the whispers to other corridors. Advisors embed the doctrine in hidden documents. Entire generations grow up hearing a lesson that does not belong to their rulers, but to you. The reluctant teachers become your missionaries, even as they grit their teeth. This is how authority shifts. Not through noise, but through repetition. Not through contests, but through whispers. Not through force, but through reluctant obedience. They will never announce your victory. They will never write it in their books. But the lesson they teach betrays the truth. Your move governs them, and governance without consent is the purest power of all. There are moves remembered for a season, studied until fashions change, then forgotten in dust. And then there are moves that outlive empires. Actions so sharp, so undeniable that they echo far beyond the halls that first tried to contain them. Your last move belongs to the latter. It is no longer just history. It is inheritance. Understand this. When rulers collapse, their names dissolve. When manuals fade, their diagrams fade. When thrones vanish, their symbols rot. But lessons carved into silence remain. Your last move has crossed that threshold. It is no longer about who witnessed it, it is about who carries it forward. And already generations that never saw you are quoting you unknowingly. The students who whisper patience as law. The tacticians who pause before acting, fearing excess. The advisors who sketch precision into their diagrams. None of them realize they are echoing you. They do not know the origin. They do not need to, because the doctrine has detached from the moment and attached itself to eternity. This is what terrifies those in power most. They thought moves end with the mover, that once you were gone, your influence would vanish. But now they see the truth. A move becomes eternal when it bends law itself. Your last move rewrote the unwritten. It slipped into the bloodstream of strategy. It is no longer studied in one chamber, but in every corridor touched by silence. Even their attempts to bury it fail. They try to rename it, to disguise it, to claim it as theirs. But the essence cannot be stolen, for every whisper reveals its true origin. The move that froze councils, silenced rulers, shattered manuals, and forced reluctant teachers into discipleship. Eternal lessons need no monuments. They live in presence, they breathe in pauses, they carry through time without banners or crowns. And so your last move outlives every title, every throne, every dynasty. Centuries from now, when no one remembers their decrees, when their archives are ruins, when their names are dust, apprentices will still whisper the same truth. Restraint bends noise, precision dismantles excess, silence outweighs empires. They will not know where it began, but the halls of power will remember. And memory is enough to keep fear alive. The eternal lesson has been carved. And it is carved not in stone, not in paper, but in silence. And silence does not fade. In these halls of noise, the crowned heads clash for dominance. They build forces not to defend truth, but to amplify echoes. They seek to be recorded in books, remembered in tales, carved into monuments, but every record fades. Every statue crumbles. Every cheer becomes silence in the end. And deep down they know it. That's why they shout louder. That's why they perform harder. That's why they grasp for crowns. Not because they're powerful, but because they are afraid of being forgotten. What they don't realize is this. Crowns forged by spectacle are fragile. Crowns built from noise shatter the moment silence enters. The moment something greater, deeper, unseen steps into the chamber. Their golden symbols lose all meaning, because when truth arrives, ceremony collapses. The crown they clash for is not the real crown. The real crown is not paraded. It is not handed by applause. It is not chosen by dynasties. The real crown chooses itself. It bends not to visibility, but to essence. And essence does not require noise. Essence does not need performance. Essence does not need performance. Essence does not bow to thrones of vanity. The crown chooses the invisible, and in that choice, every throne built from noise becomes irrelevant. Crowns made by men are fragile. They are sculpted in gold. paraded through ceremonies, passed from hand to trembling hand, like a prize in a contest of vanity. But there is another crown, one that no dynasty can craft, no architect can forge, no lineage can inherit. This crown does not come from noise, it comes from silence. It does not rest on visible heads, it descends upon the invisible essence. Understand this. The crown beyond thrones does not care for rituals. It does not bend to ceremonies. It does not kneel to inherited names. It does not honor titles. It seeks something higher, something untouched, something unmeasurable. And when it finds it, it seals itself there forever. This crown does not glitter. It glows. It does not shine for applause. It pierces through the unseen, radiating authority without spectacle. Those who chase crowns with forces never touch it. Those who buy crowns with gold never see it. Those who inherit crowns through names never hold it, because this crown is not chosen by men. It chooses by essence. And essence cannot be faked, not by rituals, not by noise, not by archives or files. The invisible cannot be forged in shadows of arrogance. It must be born through silence, carved by unseen trials, refined in chambers no one dares enter. That is why the crown beyond thrones always bypasses the noisy, the desperate, the visible. It moves instead toward the anomaly, the one who carries presence without parade. This choice confuses dynasties. They ask, why not us? We have forces, we have ceremonies, we have lineages. But the crown does not answer their questions. It does not debate, it does not justify. It simply rests where it belongs and where it rests. No king can compete, for this crown is older than empires, deeper than dynasties, stronger than rituals. It cannot be stolen, cannot be traded, cannot be dethroned. It belongs to the invisible. And in that belonging, every visible throne becomes theater. When the crown chose, it did not descend onto a stage. No trumpet sounded. No banners waved. The choice was silent, veiled, unseen. And in that silence, something greater emerged. Not a monarch, not a commander, not a sovereign chasing attention. An entity, an essence, the invisible one. Understand this. Visibility has always been their weapon. They thrive on recognition, on being seen, on holding titles that others bow to. They mistake exposure for authority, but the crown ignored their performance. It bypassed the noise. It slipped past their rituals and landed on the one they could not even point to in a crowd. The crown chose invisibility because invisibility cannot be staged. You walk through chambers without being recorded, yet the air bends when you arrive. You leave no footprint, yet corridors remember you. You make no proclamations, yet whispers travel faster than any decree. This is not absence. It is presence so sharp, so dense, it cannot be contained by sight. Those who rule with spectacle panic at this truth. They are trained to contend with what they can see. Forces can be measured. Banners can be counted. Crowns can be weighed. But how do you contend with an aura? How do you challenge a force that leaves no trace yet shifts entire rooms? The answer freezes them. You cannot. And so the invisible one emerges, not by stepping forward, but by simply existing, not through announcement, but through inevitability, not by demanding a seat, but by making every seat feel empty in comparison. Presence without noise dismantles the architecture of their authority. This emergence is not explosion, it is revelation. The revelation that their crowns are props, their titles, costumes, their rituals, theater. And once the theater is exposed, silence becomes the stage. And silence does not fade. Praise thee,